The hunter must undergo 3 trials in the forbidden forest. Until then he can be considered the king of the land. The Council of Kings men declared. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden glow over the village of Ndoka. Birds chirped in the distance, and the gentle rustling of leaves carried the whispers of the afternoon breeze. Yet, beneath this peaceful scene, a quiet tension simmered. Restlessness crept among the village women, their eyes betraying a longing that always drifted toward one man, Ikeen, the hunter. Ikeen was no ordinary hunter. He was the greatest Ndoka had ever known. His traps never failed, his arrows always found their mark, and his strength was unmatched. But these were not the only things that made him legendary. The women whispered about something else. His manhood, so immense that it was spoken of in hushed, reverent tones. Some claimed it was a gift from the gods, while others believed it was a curse, for no woman had ever tamed it. Women longed for Ikeen, not just for his rugged handsomeness or his skill as a hunter, but for the challenge he presented. They cooked for him, cleaned his hut, and offered him their bodies. Yet, none had truly satisfied him. He would take them to his bed, grant them pleasure beyond their dreams, but he himself remained untouched by ultimate release. His seed had never been spilled in passion's heat, no matter how skilled or eager the maiden. Determined, the women tried harder. They bathed in fragrant oils to soften their skin, learned the oldest secrets of seduction, and adorned themselves in the finest garments. But no matter their efforts, they left his bed unfulfilled in one crucial way: they could not break his curse. One evening, Ikeen sat outside his hut, sharpening his spear. A cluster of women lingered nearby, whispering, stealing glances at him. He smirked. They always watched, always desired, yet none understood. A young maiden, Kayamika, bold and desperate, stepped forward. "Ikeen," she murmured, lowering herself before him in submission, "is there nothing I can do to please you?" He regarded her with amusement. She had been in his bed before. Like the others, she had left breathless, trembling, yet he had not been undone. "You all try," he said, his deep voice rumbling like distant thunder, "but none of you can break me." The challenge in his tone only fueled Kayamika's determination. She leaned closer, fingertips ghosting over his thigh. "Then tell me what you desire," she whispered. Ikeen chuckled, shaking his head. "Desire is not the problem," he said simply, rising to his feet. "Perhaps the gods have fated that no woman can satisfy me." With that, he turned and strode toward the forest. He had no time for their games. The wild called to him, offering more fulfillment in the hunt than in the company of women who could not give him what he unknowingly craved. Days passed, and life in Ndoka carried on as usual. But a shadow loomed on the horizon. War was coming. The neighboring village of Omin, ruled by the fierce and powerful Queen Zamako, had long been at odds with Ndoka. Tensions had simmered for years, and now the battle had begun. Zamako was not just a ruler. She was a warrior feared by men and revered by women. She led her armies disguised as one of them, striking down enemies with ruthless precision. Her very presence sent fear into men's hearts, for she had never been conquered, physically, emotionally, or otherwise. On the battlefield, Ikeen fought with the same legendary ferocity. His arrows flew swift, his blade found flesh, his strength turned him into a nightmare for his foes. Amid the chaos, he noticed a warrior collapsed near the trees. Something about the way the body had fallen, the graceful movement, made him hesitate. Curiosity overpowered caution, and he rushed forward, lifting the fallen warrior and carrying them away from the battlefield. He did not know why he saved them, only that something inside him compelled him to. In the hidden shelter of his hunting hut, deep within the forest, he laid the unconscious warrior on a bed of animal furs. He removed the helmet, and his breath caught. A woman. Not just any woman. A striking beauty, fierce and regal even in unconsciousness. Her dark skin gleamed like polished ebony, her full lips and strong jaw exuding dominance and power. Even in slumber, she radiated danger. For the first time in his life, Ikeen felt something stir within him that was not mere lust. It was something deeper. Primal. Dangerous. When Queen Zamako awoke, her sharp gaze met his. There was no fear, no hesitation, only an unspoken challenge. She knew she had been saved by a man, but she did not expect that man to be him. Ikeen spoke first. "You are not like the others, Zamako." Despite herself, she smirked. "And you are not like other men." A flicker passed between them, a hunger, a curiosity, an impending clash of bodies rather than blades. Zamako, who had never yearned for a man in all her years, suddenly found herself trembling. The way he had carried her, the quiet care in his touch, it was foreign, intoxicating. And then there was his presence, towering, muscled, undeniably male. She could feel his heat even across the hut, and it unsettled her. Ikeen did not miss the way her breath hitched, the slight parting of her lips. He had seen desire before, but this was different. She was not like the village women who threw themselves at him. No, she was a queen, a conqueror, a warrior who took what she wanted. And in this moment, she wanted him. Before he could react, she closed the distance between them, capturing his lips in a searing kiss. It was not gentle. It was hungry, demanding. Ikeen had never been taken this way before. Women usually submitted to him, but this queen was fire, burning through his restraint. She pulled back, her breath ragged. "I do not know what you have done to me," she admitted, her voice laced with both confusion and desire. "But I need more." For the first time in his life, Ikeen wondered, could this be the woman who would finally break him? Zamako had always been in control. From the moment she ascended the throne, she had ruled with unwavering strength. She commanded armies, crushed enemies, and shaped the fate of her people. Yet now, as she stood before this hunter, this man unlike any she had ever encountered, she felt something foreign. A hunger, a need, a desire so fierce it seared through her very being. Ikeen, for all his experience with women, had never known tension like this. He had lain with countless maidens, heard their moans, watched them writhe beneath him. But never had he felt what he did now, a pull so strong, so undeniable, it shook him. This woman was dangerous, not for the sword she wielded, but for the way she made him feel. He watched her carefully. Even now, recovering from battle, she carried herself like a warrior, shoulders squared, chin high. But her body betrayed her. Her chest rose and fell in rapid breaths, her lips were slightly parted, her gaze dark with something unspoken. She wanted him just as much as he wanted her. Zamako took a slow step forward, fingers reaching for the fabric of his tunic. He caught her wrist, his grip firm. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice low, almost a growl. She held his gaze. "I do not ask twice." With that, she wrenched free and seized his face, crushing her lips against his. The kiss was unlike any he had ever known, hungry, desperate, almost violent. She was not a woman waiting to be conquered, she was a queen taking what was hers. Ikeen felt his control slipping. His body reacted instantly, his pulse hammering, his muscles coiling. His hands found her waist, pulling her closer, their bodies molding together like two pieces of a puzzle that had never before fit with another. Zamako's hands roamed over his chest, tracing the scars of past battles. Her breath was hot against his skin as she whispered, "You are unlike any man I have ever met." Ikeen chuckled, his lips trailing down her neck. "And you," he murmured, "are unlike any woman I have ever known." Their clothes fell away, piece by piece, until nothing remained between them. The flickering fire cast shadows over their bare forms, illuminating the way they moved together, tangled, and fought for dominance in a battle of a different kind. Zamako had always prided herself on her control. But here, in his arms, she was undone. The sheer size and strength of him sent her spiraling into pleasure so intense it made her gasp. She had never allowed herself this indulgence before, had never let anyone touch her like this. But with him, she did not want to hold back. She moved against him with a fervor she had never known, each motion sending waves of pleasure crashing through her. She had taken many things in her life: power, land, victories. But this was different. This was not something she took. This was something she shared. Ikeen felt himself unraveling, felt something stir within him that no other woman had ever drawn forth. He gritted his teeth, fighting to hold on, but she was relentless, moving against him with a skill and passion that left him breathless. And then it happened, a shudder, a tightening in his core, a sensation so overwhelming it nearly frightened him. For the first time in his life, he came undone. His deep, guttural moan filled the hut. Zamako's eyes widened in shock and satisfaction. She had done what no other woman could. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Their breath mingled in the warm air, their bodies still intertwined, aftershocks of pleasure rippling through them. Zamako studied him, her expression unreadable. At last, she spoke, her voice tinged with amusement, and something deeper. He exhaled, shaking his head as a smirk tugged at his lips. "You," he murmured, "are not like the others." She traced a finger down his chest. "And you, Hunter, are not like the others either." They lay there in silence for a while, the crackling fire the only sound between them. Ikeen had never lingered with a woman after pleasure, never felt the need to. But now, he did not want to leave. Zamako, for all her dominance, felt something unsettling in her chest. She wanted him again. And again. But duty called. The war still raged outside. She could not stay hidden in this hut forever. She sighed and sat up. "I must return to my people. They think I am missing." Ikeen nodded, watching her. He wanted to ask her to stay, but he knew better. She was a queen, she belonged to no man. She dressed swiftly, but before leaving, she turned back to him. "Do not speak of this," she ordered, though her tone was softer than before. He smirked. "Afraid your people will think you weak?" She narrowed her eyes. "No. Afraid I will have to return for you." And with that, she was gone. Ikeen lay back, staring at the ceiling of his hut. He had spent his life chasing something no woman had ever given him. Now that he had found it, it belonged to the one woman he could never have. He tried to push the memory of her away, to convince himself it had been nothing more than passion. But deep down, he knew the truth. He would never be the same again. Zamako rode into her village before dawn, her face hidden beneath the shadows of her battle-worn hood. The warriors who had fought alongside her cheered, relieved their queen was alive and well. But she barely acknowledged them. She moved swiftly to her palace, ignoring the murmurs and concerned looks from her council members. She had won many battles, crushed countless enemies. But this was different. The battle she had fought with the hunter, the one waged between their bodies, had left her shaken. No man had ever made her feel the way he had ever made her lose herself so completely. Worse still, she wanted more. Zamako dismissed her servants and sat alone in her chamber, staring at her reflection in a polished bronze mirror. Her lips were still swollen from his kisses. Her skin still tingled where he had touched her. She had not planned for this. She had not planned for him. A knock on the door broke her trance. One of her trusted warriors, Udoma, stepped inside, her sharp eyes filled with concern. "My queen," Udoma said cautiously. "The council wishes to speak with you." Zamako inhaled deeply. She knew what this was about. They had noticed her absence, sensed something had shifted within her. But she was not ready to answer their questions. Rising to her full height, the fierce queen once again, she said, "Tell them I will meet them at sunset." Udoma bowed and turned to leave, but Zamako stopped her. "Send a group of our best female hunters to the enemy village," she commanded. "Find the hunter called Ikeen. Bring him to me. Alive." Udoma's brow furrowed, but she did not question the order. She simply nodded and disappeared into the night. Ikeen had returned to his village carrying the weight of a secret he could never share. The war still raged, but his people had no idea that for a single night, he had lain with the enemy queen. And not just any queen, the fiercest ruler in their lands. He tried to resume his life as before, returning to his hunts, ignoring the longing glances of the village women who still sought to please him. But something had changed. The thrill of the chase, the pleasure he once found in their desperate attempts to satisfy him, felt empty. For the first time, he understood. It had never been just about pleasure. It had been about finding the one woman who could break him. And now that he had found her, he could not forget. But she was gone, back to her kingdom. He knew better than to believe he would ever see her again. She was a queen, and he was nothing more than a hunter from a rival village. Whatever had happened between them in that hut had been a moment of stolen passion. Nothing more. Or so he thought. Night fell, and Ikeen sat sharpening his blade when he heard something, a rustling in the trees. He tensed immediately, reaching for his bow. Before he could react, shadows descended upon him. They moved like ghosts, swift and silent, their weapons glinting in the moonlight. He swung at the first, but his wrist was caught and twisted painfully. Another darted behind him, pressing a dagger to his throat. Only then did he notice they were all women. Before he could fight back, something struck the back of his head. Darkness consumed him. When Ikeen awoke, he was no longer in his village. His vision blurred as he struggled to sit up, muscles aching from the journey. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense and rare oils. He was inside a grand chamber. Then he saw her. Zamako stood across the room, draped in deep red silk. Gone was the battle armor. Gone was the blood-stained war paint. Only the raw, unapologetic presence of a queen who took what she wanted remained. Ikeen's jaw tightened. "You had me kidnapped." Zamako tilted her head slightly. "Would you have come willingly?" He said nothing. She took a slow step toward him, her gaze never wavering. "I told myself I would forget you," she admitted. "That what happened between us was nothing." She reached him, her fingers ghosting over his jaw. "But then I realized, I do not want to forget." Ikeen's pulse quickened, but he refused to let her see the effect she had on him. "You are a queen," he said evenly. "You can have any man you desire." Her lips curled into a smirk. "And yet, it is only you who makes me feel this way." He swallowed hard. He should have been angry. Should have fought his way out of this palace and returned home. But all he could think about was the way her body had felt beneath his. The way she had taken him to the edge and shattered him completely. Zamako stepped back, watching him carefully. "You belong to me now," she said. "You will stay here, as mine." Ikeen's eyes darkened. "I belong to no one." She studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled, a dangerous, knowing smile. With a knowing smile, she issued the challenge. The Queen's Council reacted with outrage. "He is from the enemy village," one of them hissed. "Do you understand what you are risking?" Zamako sat upon her throne, listening to their protests with thinly veiled impatience. "He is no ordinary man," she said simply. "He is a hunter like no other, and he will be my husband." Gasps echoed through the chamber. A queen marrying a common hunter, a man from an enemy village, was unheard of. One of the elder council women stepped forward. "My queen," she said carefully, "if you truly desire him, he must prove himself." Zamako arched a brow. "And how do you suggest he do that?" The councilwoman smiled knowingly. "Let him complete the 3 great hunting trials. If he succeeds, no one will question his worth." Zamako's gaze flickered toward Ikeen, who stood silently beside her throne. She knew he was listening. Turning to him, she asked, "Well, hunter, are you ready to prove yourself?" Ikeen met her gaze, his expression unreadable. Taken from his village, thrust into a world not his own, yet she was here, the only woman who had ever broken him, the only one who had made him feel like more than just a vessel for pleasure. He smirked. "Let the trials begin." As the morning sun painted the skies in hues of gold and crimson, the people of MMU gathered to witness the impossible. A hunter from an enemy village, standing before their queen, facing the legendary trials meant only for the bravest of warriors. Ikeen, the man never conquered by any woman until Queen Zamako, now stood before her people, ready to prove his worth. The council had devised 3 great trials, each designed to test his strength, skill, and intelligence. If he failed even one, he would be deemed unworthy, an outsider, unfit to stand beside their queen. Zamako sat on her throne, her gaze unreadable as she watched the hunter. She had taken him, claimed him, but now he had to prove he deserved to stay by her side. More than anything, she wanted him to win. The first trial, the hunt of the shadow beast. The first trial was a test of skill. In the dense forests beyond the village, a monstrous creature known as Ausur, the shadow beast, lurked. Few had ever seen it and lived to tell the tale. The trial was simple. Ikeen had to hunt it and return with its heart before nightfall. Armed with only his bow, arrows, and a dagger, he ventured into the depths of the forest. The villagers whispered among themselves, convinced he would never return. But Ikeen was no ordinary hunter. Moving with silent precision, his senses heightened, he tracked the beast through broken branches, deep claw marks in trees, and the faint scent of death lingering in the air. Then he saw it. The shadow beast was unlike anything he had hunted before. Massive, covered in thick black fur, its eyes glowing like embers in the darkness. It moved with unnatural speed, circling him, testing him. Abidia did not hesitate. He was not afraid. Raising his bow, he fired. The arrow struck true, sinking into the beast's side, but it did not fall. Instead, it lunged at him with terrifying speed. He rolled to the side, barely avoiding its razor-sharp claws. The battle was fierce, a deadly dance between predator and prey. But Ikeen was patient. He waited for his moment, then, in a single swift motion, drove his dagger deep into the creature's throat. The beast let out a final, shuddering breath before collapsing. By sunset, he returned to the village, dragging the lifeless body of the shadow beast behind him. Holding up its heart for all to see, the people of MMU gasped in awe. The first trial was won. The second trial, the fire walk of the gods. The second trial was not about strength but endurance. The village elders prepared a path of burning coals stretching the length of the great courtyard. No man could cross it without enduring unbearable pain. The test was simple. Walk the length of the fire barefoot and emerge on the other side without collapsing. Ikeen knew the pain would be unlike anything he had felt before, but pain had never broken him. As he stepped onto the scorching coals, the heat seared his flesh instantly. The crowd fell silent, watching in tense anticipation. Every step felt like walking through the heart of a raging inferno, but Ikeen did not falter. His body screamed in agony, yet his mind remained focused. He kept his gaze fixed on Zamako, who watched from her throne, her expression unreadable. By the time he reached the other side, sweat dripped from his brow, his feet raw and blistered, but he had made it. The second trial was won. Now comes the final trial, the night of the three queens. The final test was the most dangerous of all, not one of physical endurance but of control. Zamako's three closest advisors, Goja, Pakula, and Rita, stood before him, each a warrior in her own right, powerful and cunning. The trial was simple. For 3 nights, each woman would take him to her bed, testing him in ways no man had ever been tested. If he succumbed to their temptations, if he gave himself fully to even one of them, he would fail. The first night, Goja came to him. She was striking and fearless, her hands tracing his form, her whispers thick with temptation. She pressed against him, demanding his surrender, but Ikeen remained unmoved. On the second night, Rita made her attempt. She was calculated, patient, skilled in the art of seduction. She murmured promises of pleasures he had yet to know, her touch deliberate, her breath warm against his skin. Still, Ikeen did not waver. The third night, Pakula arrived, the most dangerous of them all. She was silent, intoxicating, her presence more powerful than words. She neither begged nor demanded. She simply waited, letting the air between them draw him in. That night, he nearly faltered. Nearly. But as dawn broke, he stepped out of the chamber untouched, proving his loyalty to only one woman. Zamako stood still, watching as the people of MMU erupted in chants of his name. The doubt that once clouded their eyes was replaced with awe. He had done what no man before him had ever dared. She moved forward, standing before him as the golden light of sunrise framed them. "You have conquered every trial," she declared, her voice firm. "You have proven yourself worthy." Ikeen held her gaze and spoke, steady and unwavering. "And yet, I did not do it for the throne. I did not do it for power." Zamako inhaled sharply. "Then why?" He stepped closer, his voice a murmur meant only for her. "Because only you have ever made me feel like a man." A hush spread across the crowd as Zamako, the fiercest queen their land had ever known, closed the distance and kissed him in front of all. That night, as they lay together as husband and wife, he whispered something he had never spoken to another woman. "You alone make me weak," he confessed, his breath hot against her skin. Zamako smiled against his lips. "And you alone make me whole." And so, the great hunter of Ndoka became the king of Omin, not for power, not for conquest, but because he had found something far greater. A queen who had finally conquered him. Thereafter, because of the union between the King Zamako and the hunter Ikin of Ndoka, the two villages come to unity and harmony, and they lived in peace and tranquility with wars and enmity. Dear viewer, what is your takeaway on this story? Drop your comment below in the comment section. If you enjoy the story, please subscribe to this channel for more amazing and must-watch of this kind. Thank you for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay blessed.